assets for producing gas from the aquifer and testing our ability to produce gas from the shallow zone above the aquifer. So what I'd like to do is just kind of run through a quick list and talk about new assets. We put in actually 5 new pressure or passive vent wells. These are the shallow wells that go down to maybe 8 feet or so approximately, expecting to encounter gas that's above the aquifer that we can relieve passively, which means you basically put a hole in the ground, you open the valve up, and you let the gas relieve naturally as best it can. Now, of those 5 that we installed, and the 6th, which was the very first one, is the one we put up over here by Bubble Site 56, only 2 have produced results, favorable results, I should say. I mean, it's, on one hand, it's a good thing that we put in a well, we didn't get any gas, but on the other hand, we'd like to produce gas if there's gas there. But I think for the 4 that were non-productive, it can be said that there's not gas there. So that's a good thing. Okay? It's a good thing, but not a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing. But in any event, we're still thinking about what we're going to do with those wells. We'll most likely come back in the near future and plug them and get them off the landscape, and get them out of your yards and out of the neighborhoods if they're not going to provide any utility. Those that continue to produce something, we'll obviously produce them as long as we can. And that's really our objective with the ORW wells too. We want to produce all the gas we can for as long as we can and get as much gas out of the ground as possible. That's our primary objective. Okay. Now, speaking of the ORWs, since the last time we got together, we installed 2 new ones, which puts our total up over 50 now. What are we at? 51. Okay, and of those 51, 16 currently produced. We're making about 25,000 cubic feet a day.
No, 400 something like cubic, 4,900. Yeah, 49,000 cubic feet.
I'm sorry, 49. I'm confusing the cumulative.
Cumulative.
Right, the cumulative is about 25 million. We're producing about 45 to 46,000 cubic feet a day. And what's interesting is that if you look at this data and look at these graphs, you can see a couple of things that stand out. One, there is a declining production curve, and that's what one would hope to find, one would expect to find, where you're producing gas that's, one, either finite volume, or 2, it's not getting recharged at a significant rate. Could be a little of both, we don't know. I've said before, there's no way to really know for sure that there's not recharge taking place, but I can say definitively that we are producing and the trends are downward, which is another good thing. Okay. And what's also interesting to note here is that each of these colors is a well, and we're getting about 75 to 80% of all of our gas from just a handful of wells. One of them is right over here at 36, and the other one is over by brine production well number 2, we call OGR well number 1. Those 2 wells together make about 30–40% of our total daily production. Yeah. Okay. So we've got a large number of them that are non-productive. We've plugged a few of them. These 3 have been plugged. They were in close proximity to the sinkhole. We had a sloughing event that occurred back here a few months ago. We decided that it would be wise to go ahead and get these plugged and out of the way. They were not producing at the time. And we may do that on some of these other wells as time passes. There is one other drawing that we put up, Mike. Is this right here? This one is interesting because it demonstrates the distribution of the producing wells. These with green circles around them are those that are currently producing. And these right here are non-productive. These 3 are the 3 that I just mentioned that have been plugged. And what you can see from this is that we've pretty well dotted the landscape with ORW wells. We put them in basically everywhere that we can in a density pattern that is consistent with what the radius of influence testing told us, about 500 feet from wellhead to wellhead. That's the first observation. The second observation is we knew we had an area over here, an area here, and an area over here that appeared to have a higher percentage of subsurface gas in the aquifer. And that was from all the CPT probing that we did. If you remember, months ago we met and we talked about the need to put production wells, ORW wells, right here in Sportsman's Land. So there you have it. I mean, it's showing where the gas is produced. Down here, up here, and up here. And everything in between has gone relatively dormant. I don't know that there are any ORW wells that have not produced anything. We've got some volume of gas on virtually all of them, but most of them today have gone dormant. Our interpretation of that is that we have succeeded in depleting the gas from the aquifer in those locations. Okay? The wells are still there. We can always go back in and do some things with them and find out if there's any way we can enhance them and make them flow a little bit more, or if they pressure up naturally, we'll be able to tell from the pressure monitoring equipment on the well. So that's the point to be made on ORW wells. We talked at the last meeting about the need for a new south berm. Construction began, what, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, approximately. And as of this week, we're complete with
Last
Friday, we are complete with the initial containment, which is the sand that comes in first, and it basically forms a roadway upon which we will put other materials in a impermeable liner, and then surface it with limestone to make it consistent with the other. We're on target to have all of that completed by the end of the month.
No.
I didn't say which one.
Yeah, first to middle of April for the final grade to be there. So but that includes 3 weeks of allowing it to settle and the geotechnical and things like that. So we're ahead of schedule right now.
But the good news is the old south berm, what we call the original south berm, remains above water, so we're still getting benefit from it. It's not allowing any fluids to mix from the sinkhole to the area south of that original berm. We haven't seen any dramatic changes in subsidence in that area. Remember, that's what spurred the need to go in and put in the new south berm. We were concerned about losing the old south berm. Well, we haven't experienced that, and that's been a good thing. And we haven't seen any dramatic changes in seismicity since the last time we got together. In fact, the last, what we call a swarm, occurred in early January, so we're about 6, maybe 7 weeks now since we had any elevated activity in terms of MEQs, micro earthquakes. That's a good thing. There's a lot of good things here. I mean, there's a lot of good things to be optimistic about. The logging of the cavern has shown that we're about 99% full. The last time we went in was last Friday, and we tagged the fill about, I think it was less than 10 feet from the cavern roof. So when you consider that the cavern at one time was almost 2,000 feet from top to bottom, that final 10 feet or so is less than 1% of its total capacity. So that's been encouraging. Let's see, what other things did we do? Last time we met, we talked about ORW 38, which is up here to the north, where we plan to do some testing to see if we could enhance gas flow by pulling small amounts of water out of a ORW well. We put in a subsidence monitoring grid around the well, and we began a process of pumping water out. We ran that for about 4 or 5 days, pulled about 60,000 gallons of water out. Found that we had to pull water out at a much higher rate than we originally planned just to get the water level to drop. We never really got it to drop as far as we wanted to, and I think that is because of the characteristics of the reservoir. The formation where the well is completed, it probably has very high permeability, it's very porous, and water was just able to come in as fast as we could pump it out. So that's why we had to go up to that 12 gallons per minute. But it became pretty clear after we started that it wasn't going to work. We didn't make any gas. So that's a good thing, right? No gas. So we shut that down. We're continuing to monitor the subsidence. We're going in daily. We will do that until we meet our 2-week obligation. We've seen no indication of any compaction, any subsidence around that well. We're going through the same process with ORW 21, and this is just a little bit off to the east of 38.
This is 38, and this is where we're moving it to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, west, the other east. And we'll go through the same process there. We did a preliminary test last week to confirm that we still had connectivity to the aquifer, and we pulled at about 1.5 gallons per minute, and we were able to drop the water level down 20 feet, which is encouraging, which means we won't have to pump that well as hard as we did the other one. So we'll go through the same process with that well. We'll start to pull small amounts of water out. And if we start to make gas, then maybe we'll see something there that'll encourage us, at least to the extent that we can take that process out and use it on other ORW wells. If it doesn't produce any gas, we'll shut it down, just like we did with number 38. And I'll repeat this, we don't have any desire to do anything over here that would induce subsidence around homes, okay? 38 and 21 were for testing purposes, and that commitment remains. We're not gonna come in here and pull water out from under the ground around your homes, okay?